former professional skateboarder, now president of Commune Capital, managing over $200 million in real estate. He uses his platform to educate on financial freedom. Beyond real estate, he serves on the Thousand Oaks City Council, demonstrating that skateboarders who see obstacles as opportunities bring a unique perspective. From his early challenges in skateboarding to financial strategies, his story is one of resilience and success. This is Push Forward with Miikey Taylor.
Mikey!
There he is.
What's happening? So yeah, show me around a little bit. Take me on a little bit of a journey.
Okay, so we got into this office about 12 months ago. We basically ripped everything apart. We built all of this. But we're not finished. I'll walk you guys through some of the stuff. Like we don't have our kitchen finished. So I would say we're about, 75% there.
You're being very humble. This office is huge.
It's big.
I'm like, when I'm not trying to, hate on you, but when I came, I was thinking, some offices got, 8 offices.
Right.
You got the whole thing.
Right.
So I'm like pinching myself. I mean, how do you feel from where you started?
Well, yeah, see, that's the thing. The first office we were at is nothing like this. So it's cool, man. Like watching a company grow and people come on, it's exciting but humbling at the same time.
Wow. Yeah. What's the most challenging part about managing 35 people?
It's 35 personalities. Yep.
You're right.
Yep.
And so how do you deal with that? I mean, I've read books, How to Win Friends and Influence People. What's something that you kind of learned that helps with working with a lot of people and a lot of personalities?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's almost like the correct structure. So what you don't want to do is have one person managing 30, right? How we said it, it's like, one manages 4 and then that splinters out and that splinters out. So it's a little bit more efficient.
Yeah.
And so who I work with by and large is my COO, Michael.
Yeah.
And so he basically from there runs the operations. So I'm like, okay, Michael, I'm going to talk to you. And then, Jerry, one of my partners, he's everything finance. Wow. Like anything number based is him.
Yeah.
So we just basically know our lanes and then, we have people underneath and then underneath that.
Right. Because I heard like before all of this started in your skateboard, we're going to talk about more over there, but there was something that you were doing where it was almost like you had to get out of the skateboarding world because you weren't working well with people well.
Yeah. I'll tell you that story, man. Yeah, this learning how to work with people was learned for me. That even though naturally I'm more of a people person, having to manage is not the same. So that was, I wasn't good at that in the beginning. I'll tell you, but I basically lost a shoe sponsor because of that. The company is called DBS.
We know DBS.
Okay, so DBS gave me my first shoe, gave me my first clothing line with Maddox, which was kind of a combination of the two.
Yeah.
And I loved that. Like I love the process of having an idea of what my shoe was gonna look like, designing it, getting samples, figuring out how to sell it, loved it. And so I wanted to ultimately be more involved with DBS than just be a skater, right? And Tim Gavin, who was the president at the time, as I pitched it to him, hey dude, I want to be involved. He was like, absolutely not. You're just a skater, be a skater. And so I ended up quitting DBS to ride for Etnies because they wanted me to be more of that, more involved with shoe design, more involved with curating the team. And I jumped in with basically no experience in that and fumbled. Like I was just not good at it. So I had like the brand manager calling me going, dude, you can't say these things. You can't treat people like this. And I was just like, oh my God.
Right.
So that was, I had to learn that one.
And so how did you learn how to treat people better? What was something that worked for you, that's working for you now?
I think it was just more experience. Like I didn't have any experience. So how I came in was based on what I saw. And what I saw was like movies, It was like the boss came in and it was super like authoritative, like do this now and like. So I was like, okay, I'm that guy. Like do this. Oh, this sucks. Right. I would work with the designers to come up with shoot concepts, right? And then we would get samples and I would look at them and go, these are all wrong. This is not right. This is not right. This is not right. Let's send it back, right? And then that process would happen. They'd call me in. We got a shoe sample. I would look at it. And nothing was changed, basically. And so instead of like knowing how to work with people to get things done, I would take the shoe and go, this is trash, right? Just super aggressive.
Not connecting with them.
No. And that was because I was basing what a leader looked like off of the representation I was giving from BLS movies or shows.
So now what is it now? Are you just talking to them and saying, hey, how are you talking to them now?
Well,
The language.
Yeah, so basically, I guess this is the best way to say it. My idea in the beginning was, I'm here speaking down to everybody, right? The difference is it's more like this, right? It's like my job as leader is to build you up, not push you down, right?
Yeah.
And so in that,
You make them feel special, important.
yeah, and like,
way.
you know, when there's challenges, it's like, okay, what is the challenge? How do we break this? You can do this, set them off, and let people shine. That's like
Yeah,
the
I
big
love
key,
that.
you know?
I love that. Well, let's take a seat. Let's
do
take
it.
a seat, Mikey.
Let's do it.
All right. This is a huge blessing for me. And I say that because I'm from Alaska. And as a kid, when it was snowing outside, I would skateboard in my garage. I would watch City Stars. I would watch all of it. I would see your nollie crooks, nollie over crooks, and your style. And not just that, it was your personality. It was this enthusiasm that you had. And I just want to start this off with, like, did you always have that about yourself? Like this happiness, this...
That's a good question. So I would say yes, but I had a moment where it was challenged. So basically, like as a kid, like I was always like a happy kid. Like I enjoyed being around people, had fun. When I found skateboarding, like I was always pretty good until my basically passion became my career. So I was having fun skateboarding. I got sponsored. I turned pro, and then I would say from probably 22 to 27, I was struggling with just like anger issues. I was pissed off all the time. I complained about everything. Yeah, I went through like a
What
whole...
happened?
It was probably so when you become a pro, when you have anything that you do just because you love your craft, and then it becomes your career, it changes, right? It's just inevitable, it happens. And so the reason why I fell in love with skateboarding went away. Like I went from like it being my escape and time with my friends and having fun and being creative to I have deadlines and pressure and people talking crap about me and all of these other aspects where I went, this is like a job now, and I'm no longer enjoying it for what it was. It's no longer an escape. Now I need an escape from skateboarding, right? And I had to ultimately like fall back in love with skateboarding. And until that happened, I was struggling. Like I was like not stoked all the time.
Right, so how did you fall back in love with it? Because you're saying pressure. I mean, not everybody is a skateboarder, but we all go through pressure.
Right.
So how did you learn to deal with that and find happiness back with skateboarding again?
Yeah, that's good. I had to find a new reason to love skateboarding. It wasn't the same, right? Like when I was a kid, it was truly a way for me to express myself, to check out from the world, all of those aspects. How I ended up falling in love with skateboarding is I started falling in love with the business of skateboarding. Right? It was like I started really liking, how do I create product that, sells more? How do I resonate with the audience better? How do I negotiate better deals? Like I just started really enjoying the concept of, okay, I am now a pro skateboarder. If you want to call myself a brand, I am this brand. How do I get out to more people? How do I improve my skill?
How did you get to that mindset? Because there's only, I think, I'm not saying a couple, but you got Korean Campbell who had that mindset. Rob Dyrdek had that mindset.
Right.
Were those people, since you're on City Stars, were those people that you saw them doing things where you're like, this is sparking my imagination of something bigger?
So it was a combination of a handful of people. Jamie Thomas was by far the first skater that I resonated with who was doing more. Like I remember seeing him in, maybe it was in Welcome to Hell or Thrill of It All, but he was filming. I remember he's like filming Adrian Lopez, right? And I was like, what is Jamie Thomas, a pro skater, doing filming?
Right.
I was like, that's so cool.
For sure.
And then I found out he owned his companies. And so I always resonated with people like that. Andrew Reynolds, Jamie Thomas, Colin McKay, Steve Barra, Mike Carroll, Rick Howard. It was always the people that were trying to do more. And then I would say from the person who was like maybe speaking wisdom into me, probably Rob Dyrdek was the biggest mentor I had in creating the outlook of what I could do here.
Now, is this the quote which I've heard you speak on before about he gave you that that tunnel vision, that long 10-year vision.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that and how other people can implement that in their life.
Okay, so when I was on City Stars, we would always go to Reno. Like Reno was like for whatever reason, like our go-to city to go skate. And Deerdick came with us on one of these trips. And dude, I was like 19 years old. So I'm 19, Paul's 17, Van's like 17, like we're all kids. So we're out all night skating. I remember it's 2, 3 in the morning. We're in the van and somebody's trying a trick. Maybe Devin was trying a trick. And we're just talking shop. And for whatever reason, Rob looks at me and goes, how long do you want to be a pro skateboarder? Right? And I'm like, I don't know, like as long as possible. Like 5, 6 years would be insane, right? And he goes, I want you to set your goal at 10 years. Focus on a 10-year career, right? And then what he paired that with, which was amazing, was, and every decision you make today and tomorrow should be based on, will this decision allow me to do this for 10 years? If it jeopardizes it, not the right decision. It was a total mind shift for me because I wasn't making decisions based on that far out. I was making decisions on like what I was experiencing in the moment, you know?
Wow. That is, that's powerful.
Right.
That's a powerful statement because we're seeing what Rob's doing now. And so he's living that. And I think it's even cool that you listened because a lot of times people can offer insight, offer wisdom, but we don't listen.
Right.
So that's incredible. So you talked about having a vision, having a long-term vision. How does somebody, I guess, set goals and implement or execute?
Okay, so there's what I did as a skater and then there's what I do now and it's changed, right? When I was a skater, it was just simply like, what's my goal? I want a pro shoe. Okay, if my goal is a pro shoe, what do I have to do to get it? And in my, through the lens or perception or perspective I had back then, it was, I need so many people to know who I am that I would have the demand for a shoe. So I was like, okay, get better, get more exposure, and put so much pressure on my sponsor that I need a shoe. Now, there wasn't much more than that. It was just, I am not stopping until I get the shoe, right? What it looks like today is a little bit different. It's, we have 10-year goals, we have 5-year goals, we have year goals, right? And then in that we have, we do a partner meeting once a month. We do a quarterly meeting that is basically meant to check where we're at in the process. This was the goals we set. How close are we to hitting them? Is there anything we need to kind of, redirect on? And so there's more systems to maintain accountability now. I didn't have that when I was skating.
Right.
It was just purely, what is my goal, and don't stop till it's accomplished.
Wow. And so skateboarding was your passion and you had that 10 years. So tell me how the transition went. I know you said you were talking about the shoes and how that, I don't think that went very well. But just tell me about the transition.
There's 2 parts to it. On the money side, I wasn't spending money. I lived like I was absolutely broke, right?
What?
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you this question too, because I think people want to know this. People want to know how much does the average pro skater make? Because when I was young, I thought everybody was balling until I went to one of my sponsors' warehouse and I saw a legend packing boxes.
Correct.
And it changed my perspective in life. So tell me how much you were making at that time and the average of pro skaters and just, going to what that looked like.
So the average pro skater makes less than $100,000 a year. If I were to put a number on it, I would say it's somewhere around 50 or 60 grand a year is the average. You have a handful of guys that make between 100 and 200, and then you have 4 that make more than that, right? And look, there is an argument to say you're living your dream, you're doing what you love, you're making 60 grand a year, sick, right?
Sure.
Or if you're in the group that's making 150 grand a year, sick. The challenge is it's for a short window of time when you consider how long we eventually earn for, right? If you technically you're gonna earn until you're 65, 70, well, making 100 grand a year until you're 27, it's not gonna get you there, right? So there's that.
Yeah.
The other part is dude, you start making more than your friends when you're young, right? Most 18-year-olds aren't making 4 or 5 grand a month. And so you're okay, cool, I'm killing it, I'm spending, right? Because you just don't know what you don't know. And then before you know it, you start making more money, you start spending more money, and then your career ends and you're like, I didn't save anything.
So what did you do? Because you didn't spend no money, so what were you doing?
I was investing. I was investing like crazy. Yeah,
What?
from 19 until my career ended at 34.
Now, who told you about investing at 19? Because a lot of us, we don't know nothing about that. Break it down.
Yeah, so my parents were, basically what it came down to my parents. I told my parents I wasn't gonna go to college, and my parents panicked. Right? They were not cool with it. And so their only way of getting comfortable was you have to have somebody help you with your money, okay? At this time, I'm making $800 a month. So I'm not like balling, I'm making nothing. They connected me with somebody, and he basically sat me down and went, how long do you want to skate for? So almost the same thing Rob did, but with a financial aspect.
For sure, okay.
Right? I don't know, as long as I can. Okay, well, how much money can you make in the next 6 years? I don't know. What do you want to do after skateboarding? I don't know. Every single question he asked me, I didn't know, which was scary, right? And then he basically went into, well, this is how you need to be thinking about it. When do you want to retire? I've never heard anyone say that. I've never heard anyone say, when do you want to? I've always heard you retire at 65.
For sure, that's all I heard about.
Then the next thing was, how much money do you need to live on when you retire? Well, I don't know. So basically what that did was he helped create the vision of where I needed to head, and then he helped me create the pathway to get there. And because I wasn't making that much money as a skater, I had to take a different approach to get there, which was live off nothing and put as many dollars as I can into, at that time it was like I was doing retirement funds.
Okay.
So that's
and what kind of funds were those? Like
IRAs. I had a Roth IRA, I had a SEP IRA. It was like, very.
How much did you start? Like how much was it to first put your money in there?
Oh, dude, if I were to look back at the first year I invested, it probably wasn't that much. I don't know, $5,000 for the year, maybe.
Wow.
And then it just became more and more.
So then
and more.
every month did you invest? Or is this every year?
No.
How often?
Yeah, basically the program he put me on that changed everything was my checks didn't go to me, right? My checks went to a corporation that we started that he had access to. And then that corporation transferred money to me every month.
Wow.
And it was a very small percentage of what the company was
you
getting.
didn't see that money?
I didn't, not even did I not see it, I pretended it didn't exist, right?
Ooh.
So I have the money I'm operating on, and I just basically played this game. I'm not allowed to call and have more money transferred, right? And then that money is what we are investing in. And then a portion of it was, we saved it for taxes and et cetera, et cetera. But that's how the whole thing launched.
Wow. Okay, I'm inspired.
And so with the magic, this was the magic, because this
Okay.
is something he gave me that changed everything. He started talking about things that I could do to increase my income, right?
What is that?
Well, big thing he told me was like, he introduced the concept of investing in yourself, right? What can you do that will give you more skills to then earn more income? Now, when I was skating, the only thing I could come up with was, well, the better I get at skateboarding, the more kids that will like me, and then the more kids that will buy product from me, right? And so that's when we started investing in skate parks, where we started coming together with friends, leasing a warehouse and putting a skate park that we could basically train in, training facilities, right? So that was the first way that I did it. I started Mikey Days. That was definitely an approach to try to figure out how to get more eyeballs on me. And so where the magic happened was, as I started making more money, my corporation was making more. I wasn't transferring more. It was live off this forever, make more there so that I can invest more. And that's why you saw stuff with I drove a 92 Civic hatchback until I was 30. You know what I'm saying? Like I had enough money to drive a nice car.
So
wasn't doing it.
Yeah, you were making good money, but you chose to invest,
Yeah.
live off something small,
Yeah.
and drive something a little bit more chill.
Yep. Yeah. Now there's a health element to this, but like, dude, when I'd be eating out, we'd be eating out like McDonald's and like Burger King. It was like, I could get away with spending $15 a day on food eating out, which is typically way more expensive than eating at home, right? So it's like, I just wasn't spending that much money to live.
Right. So your income is building, everything is moving and shaking. Then you get into the beverage business. Tell me a little bit about that, because I heard that's when your income kind of really just exploded.
So my income started going up as we started St. Archer, by and large because of what Mikey Days did for me. So I started Mikey Days.
Okay.
It was the first time I really put personality out there. It wasn't just me trying to do tricks, it was like personality. And I did it on the barracks, where at that time the views were crazy. So my product started selling.
Exposure.
Yeah, I started selling so many pairs of shoes. And then in that I started making more money because of it, right? Then we started St. Archer. And when we started it, we had to put money in to basically get it to the point of bringing it to investors. And then, and these investors weren't like Wall Street people. It was like my friends, my family. I'm calling myself, Paul and Josh, we were calling everyone we knew, seeing if they'd invest with us, right? Then we started the company, and we weren't making a lot of money while we were doing the company, because all the money that was coming in, we were basically spending. And then we were doing these basically capital raises, so asking investors for more money so that we could grow and ultimately get it to the point of selling. So we didn't make money with St. Archer until we sold the business.
Now, how long did you have the business in? St. Archer, yeah.
From the point of us opening doors till we ended up selling it was about 3.5 years.
So 3.5 years, you're putting all this money in, you took a risk, you don't know what's gonna happen until you sold. Now tell me about the selling period and what happened.
So we started talking to some of the big companies.
For sure.
Anheuser-Busch was one of them. Miller Coors, Molson Coors was one. Constellation, like monsters in the beverage industry. And a couple of them basically gave us offers to buy the business. And then we kind of got ourselves in a little bit of a bidding war, which was great for us. And then we ended up selling the company to Miller Coors. And then we went through basically the transition of this is ours and we do things our way to this is no longer ours. And how do we work with a big corporation who has, their process and their vision, et cetera.
Wow.
So it was new,
Wow. Now, if you could, how much did you make off that investment, Mikey?
I'll tell you what we made our investors.
Okay.
We just about 12x'd everybody's money in 3.5 years. So for the investors that gave us $100,000, we gave them about 1.2 million back in about 3 years.
Stop it.
Yeah.
No, are you serious?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, and then as the founders, like we ended up making more than that as the founders.
Exactly.
But that was, I mean, look, my dad, my uncle, my father-in-law,
Come
like it was like
on.
giving, yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah, my dad paid off his house when he gave him his check. It was sick. Yeah, it was awesome. That was the best part about the whole thing. That was the very best part. Like giving checks to people. Like, dude, we were crying. It was the best part of the whole thing.
So you got y'all were celebrating.
Yeah.
You guys had a whole dinner, or what happened? Like the first moment, because I know you have to do all these meetings, but I mean that's a big deal.
So we made the mistake of going to Vegas before we were going to get the offers.
You got celebrated before.
And we were like, let's go to Vegas. We get the offers in Vegas.
Right. Yep.
So we're doing the lazy pool. We're just like, living it up, whatever.
Whoa.
And all of a sudden we got the first offers, and they were much lower than we thought. And it was like the realization of like, oh my gosh, did we just celebrate too soon?
Yeah.
And then it ended up working out. But I remember there was like kind of a lightweight panic.
Yeah.
And then we sold it, and dude, 4 or 5 months after we sold it, my wife goes, we didn't do anything. Like, we didn't celebrate this at all. And so we were like, okay, let's just go get dinner. So my wife and I went and got dinner. It wasn't even anything special. Yeah.
But y'all celebrated, so y'all.
Yeah. The celebrating thing doesn't come natural to me, actually.
Why is that?
Even to this day. I think it all stems from skating, where basically I'd go film a trick, right? And when I'd land the trick, I'd feel great, right? Like stoked, like I'm personality's up, like high fives. The next morning, it was almost as if it never happened. Like, all right, how do I get this feeling back again?
You gotta go to the next
right?
trick.
And do it again and again. And I think that just put me in the rhythm of like constantly trying to succeed and never taking a moment of going, I did it. So like my wife and I try to get ourselves, even our partners, like we as partners don't do a good job celebrating the wins.
And I think, that's good that you're aware of that. And I think it, a I want you to start doing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want you to start celebrating yourself. I walked in this place and I'm like, I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you know, because life, I'm not saying it's short, but sometimes it can be.
Totally.
And I think it's great to just say, you know what, we did this thing,
right.
you know, with your team and however you do it. But no, this is great. Now I want to talk about your company, Commune, and how it started, because you went from the beverage company and then how did the real estate, how did this all happen? Because right now in my generation, everything is like home ownership.
Right.
But I was talking to your COO, and he talking about that might not be the best thing to do right now. You might want to invest in, you know, have a portfolio of apartments. And so just give me a little spill on that.
Okay.
I know it's a lot. I know.
Say this the right way. So for most people, buying a home is the best thing to do for most people. But if your plan is financial freedom,
like I want to have a wealth building empire.
Yeah. And
okay.
you ultimately what you mean, you're looking at wealth, but you're also looking at income, right? Because you can have a huge net worth, but if you have no cash flow coming in, you can't retire, right? You need money to come in to support your expenses to get to a point where you can choose not to work, right?
Okay.
But what most people do is they go through the wealth build when they're younger, and then as they start getting older, they go, okay, I'm going to turn some of this maybe equity or growth into cash flow.
Right.
And a good way to look at it is typically, if you're looking at a percentage of return, you're going to make less if it's a cash flow opportunity, just cash flow, than you would a growth opportunity, right? So in theory, there's more risk potentially with growth, so you should see a bigger return. With a house is phenomenal for saving your money, and a house may appreciate, but you're paying your house every month, right?
It's not right.
The house isn't paying you. When you buy investment properties, the house is paying you, right? Because you have a tenant that's coming in that's paying your expenses, pays your taxes, and then pays you cash flow, okay? And so if your path is, I want to get to financial freedom soon, I personally don't think owning a home gets you there faster. But that's not the goal for most people. Most people, they work, they save, but by and large, their home is their forced savings account. And then as they get older and they want to get to retirement, what they do with their house becomes a pretty big component of it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
So if people want to become wealthy and they come to you, like I'm coming to you, I'm a student, I'm learning, what do I do? If I have 10,000, if I have 20,000, if I you know, whatever it is, what is the steps?
Well, what I would tell you, if you came in and said, what do I do? I've got $10,000, like what is my first step to do this? I would say put that $10,000 into everything you're doing right now. You've got this whole setup going on. You're doing interviews, you're building your brand. I would put the money into that. How do I make this even better? How do I increase my network? How do I get more eyes on what I'm doing? Right? I would put that money into building your brand, because what that's going to result is more income coming in because of it. So I'm of the belief that you will always see the biggest return when you invest that money into yourself. Correct.
Ooh.
Correct. Then as you get this brand cranking, right, then you can start putting money into maybe more passive investments, or you could look at, you know, you actually have a lot of options that you can put into a path that kind of align with your goals, right? Like remember when I told you I had somebody that helped me, you know, figure out the vision, and then we figured out the path to get there.
Right.
Right. That vision and that path may be very different than you, might be very different than him or anyone watching.
Right.
So there's not really a one size fits all, but I am a believer in whoever you are, look for ways to increase your skill or learn a skill that you can then go monetize. That from a return standpoint is massive.
I'm just taking this all in right now. Okay, so you wouldn't consider, if you're trying to wealth build to buy a home, you would consider, but how much money do you have to start to get into what you're doing? Like what is the minimum amount of money?
So that's what I do. The minimum is high.
Okay.
Right?
What's high?
Well, you have to be an accredited investor. That's the first part. So you have to make over $200,000 a year as an individual, or have a net worth over $1 million, excluding your primary residence.
Whoa.
That just allows you to invest, right? So the threshold is super high for most private offerings, right? But that is not it's not where I start. It's not where anyone starts typically. I started with a Roth IRA, right?
Okay.
Started with, having one vehicle that would be, all my growth would be tax-free. I had a SEP IRA, so my, can deduct my contributions against my taxable income. So bringing tax basis down and pushing my tax bill out. I was investing in, by and large, funds in the market. That is how I started. The amount I was doing wasn't that big. I just did it consistently. And I built the discipline. And then as I started making more money, that amount got larger and larger, right? I think my first investment into a private offering, which is what I do, I think my first investment was around $40,000. Was my first investment
into a property or into a firm, like a
my first investment into storage units was into a fund, and I think my first investment was $40,000. Was my very first one.
And how long did it take you to see a return on that? Because that's like, to a lot of people, it's like $40,000, like, that's a lot of money.
Right.
And it's like, how much are you getting in return of that? How quick does it turn out? How does it seems like a lot of risk. I don't know.
So real estate is long, right? So I'll give you an example from what you're currently seeing in the market. What most people are selling for a passive investment in the space we're in is about a 15% IRR to the investor. So on a 15% IRR, you're basically doubling your money every 5 years.
Okay, what's R&R again? Sorry.
IRR.
What's that?
It's basically a metric where you can have a return that also includes time.
Okay.
Right. So the hard part is, like, if I were to say, I got you a 50% return on your investment, right? That's a whole different thing if I was able to do that within 3 months versus 10 years. Right?
For sure.
So IRR calculates the time in which that investment was there. So almost think of it as, if you got a 15% IRR, it was you made 15% every year.
Okay.
Your investment was invested. And in an IRR basis, at 15%, you're doubling your money every 5 years. So your $40,000 would basically be worth $80,000 on that metric at year 5.
And that's what happened for you.
That is basically what happened for me.
But you had to look, so it's almost like it's a risk, but you're looking at all the metrics.
100%, yeah. And then in that return, that's not just based on appreciation, right? It's, if you got cash flow, right? You get a dividend every quarter, that's included in the return. When you sell it, that's included. So that, by and large, was, I think, the return profile that I had, and I kept reinvesting into it. It's like $40,000. My next one was pretty large into it. I think it was a couple $100,000. Like, I started just really, really kind of putting money into it.
And so now, could you retire like right now? Are you like, you have enough cash flow to be like, I don't gotta work? Is that like where you're at now, or is it still like you're on the?
I had to make this decision in 2016. In 2016, I could have not worked, but the lifestyle that I would have to live, not what I wanted, right? Like, it would have been difficult for me and my wife and our kids to live life we wanted to live,
right,
if we just called it no more income until we're in our 80s. And so we decided to start a new business, by and large. And that was more because the goal in which I wanted to get to become financially free, I hit, but then I ultimately raised the goal.
Wow.
Right? Like, my goal in the beginning was, if I'm remembering the calculation, I wanted to get to $3 million of investable assets so that I could draw 4% off of that and pretty much have a good lifestyle.
Wow.
And then we got to 3, and I was like, okay, I kind of want to keep going, and then it kind of just became a game in a sense.
Right.
So.
And how is it now? Because like you're saying, I mean, you say right now you're working on celebrating yourself. But is there a limit to this? I mean, how is it? Or will you get to a place where you're like, I'm good, or is it like?
Good question.
How does that work?
Yeah, it's a really good question.
Because it's like infinity and beyond.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question. For me, it's not infinity because I'm not willing to sacrifice what it would take to get there. So for me, it's not infinity. It's not a billion either. I'm not willing to sacrifice what would need to be done to get there. Now, the jam up to this is the money, and the number of the money is almost irrelevant. Like, I'm actually like, money doesn't really do much for me. Like, I'm not like driven by money. I don't feel more important when I have it. It's more a game to help set the goal.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really that. So
is it because you got to that, sometimes when we don't have a lot, we want a lot, but maybe because you've seen it,
No, it's because I figured out what drives me.
What's that?
The process, the journey. I love the journey. When I get to the goal, I actually become, okay, now what? But the process in which it took me to get there, I absolutely love. I love that part.
I love that because people are the opposite.
Yeah.
People focus on just the prize, but they don't focus on the journey. But the journey is what
the journey's the fun stuff. Yep, that's
your
the fun
character.
Stuff. Yeah, and that's the challenges. It's the problem solution, right? Like, if you have your goal, you're trying to get there, and so the process to do it is actually fun. It's like, what's getting in our way? How do we move around it? How do we get more people in? I love that part.
What is your best problem-solving techniques, or just in general? Because a lot of people aren't thinking like that. We think, if there's a problem, I gotta get out of here. I'm freaking out, I'm stressing. You're like, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
So how do you solve your problems?
Really good question. That's a really good question. So the reason why it's gonna take me a second to answer it.
You're good.
I've been tweaking my process over this last year on how I go about it, right? So typically how it is, something happens, and really my first reaction is, okay, well, what are our options?
What are our options?
Right?
Okay.
So I'll either try to figure out what our options are. I'll meet up with Michael. Michael, what are our options? Jerry, what are our options? So I bring people together.
Bring your team. Okay.
We brain dump what the options are, and then we usually have a little bit of time till we make a decision. Kind of my go-to when I get home, I run it by my wife, right? Babe, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? She has a gift, I think, and also because she's on the outside, she can kind of give a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
And then we come together, and then it's decision-making time, right?
Wow. And the questions that you're asking empowering questions,
right,
versus, you know what I mean? It's not like a down, it's up. You're getting your mind to think,
right,
which I think is good.
This is where the part, though, in which I'm tweaking. Basically what would happen, sometimes we get stuff and it's just like, well, we don't know what to do.
It's a big problem.
Right?
Okay.
What my normal path was, here's the problem, and it's how am I going to solve this? How can I solve this? Right? And then it morphed into, how can we solve this? Okay? And then when we couldn't, I would get to the point of going, all right, man, like, it would be going to God. God, how do I solve this? Lord, give me the wisdom to be able to figure out how to do this, right? But in this element, it would be, we, God. Right?
Ooh, that's good.
But
Mikey.
the flip, though, and this is how I flipped it,
right.
I'm trying to get myself, when something happens, to start with God, to start with guidance, then to start with we, and the last one I ever want to get to is I. So the
you preaching.
Yeah, the order I'm trying to flip on itself.
Say that one more time.
Okay, so I went from I to we to God. God was my last resort.
Got it.
Now I'm trying to go to him first, then the team, and I want to basically remove myself as much as possible. I'm like don't ever get to just me. If I'm making decisions alone, it's limited.
That is so beautiful that you want to put God first into everything you're doing. Yeah. And that explains, we just met, but that explains everything now. Right. It really does. So look, everybody wants to invest, but they ain't no investing without good credit. Right. So help just break down credit, why it's important to have good credit, and just break that down for me. Okay, so this is something that I actually learned the hard way. I was taught growing up to stay away from credit cards, and because of that, I just never built credit. I didn't have bad credit, I just had zero credit, right? And when you have zero credit, most people will not lend to you because they have no record on if you pay back your debts in time, if you're responsible, etc. So it is important. What I wish my parents would have done with me, so here's like kind of what you can do. I wish they would have put me as an authorized user on their credit card so that my name was on their card as they were spending and they were paying off their debt or their credit, that my credit history would grow because of it, right? So I would build my credit because of that. Now, where you get into problems is credit cards can be sold to you as a game
for you to win points, right? If I spend, I get points to travel.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you're spending more money than you have because the goal or the incentive is to point you out so that you can go to Hawaii, whatever, right? Excuse me. Not why you want to use credit, right? A credit card best used to only buy things that you can afford and to pay it back in full every single month, no matter what. If you follow those two concepts, you'll be fine. You would be totally fine. You'll build your credit. Everything will be good. Where people run into a trap is when they go, oh, you know what? I can buy that. I don't totally have the full amount, but I'll put it on my credit card and I'll make 5 payments and then it'll be paid off.
Got it.
That type of thinking will
ruin you.
It'll break you. Yep.
Wow. Well, that was well. Speaking of credit and everything like that, I want to give you your credit where credit is due, and that is with being a council member out here where you're from. Just congratulations on that. I mean, you're living a couple of lives here, and it's pretty incredible. Tell me a little bit about your plans for the city that you're a council member for. What do you envision for the community?
So I came in at a time where our city was updating their general plan, right? So the general plan is what our city is going to look like over the next 25 years, right? So you're forecasting the future. I stepped into that.
Wow.
So this whole last year has been spent, a lot of time on that plan. And that plan, we're actually voting on if we're approving it in 2 weeks, right? So that's pretty exciting. Like to think about, like I grew up here and, now you're talking about what's going to go where. And It was awesome. Even like last week, we were talking about the Civic Arts Plaza and I was talking with our assistant manager and I actually grew up with his brother. He was one of my friends that I skated with every day.
Wow.
So I've known the assistant manager since he was like, I don't know, 8 years old, right? And now we're sitting here going, oh my gosh, we're like looking at concepts of what like the Civic Arts Plaza can become.
Beautiful.
And it was like almost emotional. Like, dude, can you believe we're doing this?
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So are you able to make, with your board, you guys can get bills passed in your city? Is that what you guys do?
Yeah, so we are the policy makers, right? So the staff will bring us items that they either want direction on or we vote on, and then that gives them the path or the framework in which they're going to go out and.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you thought about making a policy where, and this is one, but we need it, a policy in schools where maybe they can learn about investing, the things that you're doing? Is there any possibilities that maybe you could potentially get involved with that?
No, because we have our school board. And our school board is different than our city council.
Okay.
But I love that. Yeah, I absolutely love that.
All right, I think that would be beautiful.
100%.
All right, so last question. What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, my kids. Yeah. I want my kids to be leaders. I want my kids to have all of the tools that I was responsible in providing for them to go make an impact and ultimately do. I mean, I don't have to compare myself to me, but like I want them to have all of the tools available to go do way more than my wife and I did.
Right.
So I think it's them, like who they end up becoming, I think is my and my wife's ultimate legacy, because that's a big calling in which, or why we're here, you know?
Mikey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I'm stoked to see you.
Cool.